Please excuse the scruff. Actually, it is for a reason, but never mind that. This is a tale of one of my Shadowrun games, which I actually had forgotten up until now, kind of. Oh, I did buy some new books, the Shadow Tech book, and the Street Samurai catalog. If I've bought some since then, no, I haven't. I'm sorry. I've been buying up a bunch of my old Shadowrun books that I have misplaced. My gal April hooked me up with these. Love you, babe. So these are some of my favorite books. The Shadowrunners Ultimate books. So I've been going to like half-price books and looking over the shelves and looking at all the Planescape books, because Planescape is one of my favorite settings, and trying to remember which books I have and which ones I don't. And that's why I said, I don't know if I have this book or not. I know I didn't have this one. So yeah, I was like, especially I was looking at the Planescape ones, and I'm pretty sure I have virtually all of them. It's probably just like a couple of the little adventure things I don't have, and even those I might have picked up. I don't know. Anyway, so I was looking through this, and just a brief addendum to the Squirt Gun Wars. This is the chapter I was talking about, where it says compounds. This is an even more fascinating chapter than I remember. The first one that you see is Carcerans. And it even has a picture, not that the picture means jack squat to you, but what the Carcerans do are essentially like a binary compound that you put something into it and it decays over time. Basically it's like a time bomb, like a molecular time bomb. So if you remember in Escape from New York, or more specifically, Escape from L.A. This is more accurate. They inject Snake with a virus, and they say you've got 48 hours to do this, or the virus will be let loose in your bloodstream, and this virus will kill you. That's kind of what this is. It's not completely the same, but there's almost always, this is one of the DM's favorite tools when it comes to Shadowrun or any kind of corporate espionage. Is when, the evil corporation wants to screw the Shadowrunners out of their money or something like that. Kind of like in the movie Crank, when he gets injected with the Chinese shit. Something like that, where there's you're going to do what I say, you're going to do something they would not normally do. They're forced to do something against their will because they've been injected with this virus. And, they've got 48 hours to do it, and we'll give you the antidote, but if you don't do it in 48 hours, this shit's going to break down in your bloodstream and you'll die. Or, you'll get amnesia or something. So they've actually made stats for the shit that does this. So the cost of it, the cost of the actual stuff that breaks down depends on the delay that you want to do it. The longer the delay, the more it costs. So it's the cost of it is the cost of the delay times whatever you're putting inside it. So if the delay is just an hour, it's $25 times the agent is what it's called. If it's a week, it's $200. If you want it to go all the way to a year, it's $6,400 times the agent cost. So now you have, in this book, now you have the Shadowrunners coming up with shit like this. Can you imagine? The players my players never got so creative as to start doing this shit, but can you imagine, now I've just done it, can you imagine player characters subjecting people on the street to Carcerans, essentially becoming pimps? I could actually see, I might actually do this if I ever ran a Shadowrun game, having some kind of evil pimp, or a drug dealer, forcing people to work for him by, periodically injecting them with some kind of lethal shit, and I'll only give you the antidote if you keep working for me. You got to keep coming back to me every week because I've got the only shit that can keep this stuff from breaking down. Because it's, like you can start making shit up for this. Because like, I've got some kind of unique genetic thing that does this. And he might even be lying. Because your average guy in the street doesn't know what the fuck this is. Because let's say you've got, you might have to have some kind of biotech skill to know what this shit is. So yeah, this is the kind of thing. This is actually kind of clever that they even thought to put this in the game. Because you see this in movies a lot, or you see this in games a lot. This is almost cliche. That, oh, we're going to do this again. You've been injected with shit, and now you got to do this. This is in comic books a lot. Where the guy's like, I got to do this. I don't have a choice. If they don't do it... This is actually something they usually do with, like, the hero's kid. This is the transporter. Like, Jason Statham always gets stuck with this, doesn't he? Like Crank, the transporter. Crank is different, but like, if you don't do this, your kid is going to die in 48 hours. So yeah. And you can combine this with the lethal shit you put in the DMSO. Diecoat. Diecoat is another one of the Shadowrunners' favorite things ever. Because Shadowrunners love katanas. Shadowrunners love swords. Because when you're a street samurai, you gotta have a katana. And when you've got a katana, you've gotta have the bestest katana ever. And so what Diecoat is basically it's like electroplating, but it's like electroplating with diamond. So you're basically plating your sword with diamonds. So you almost always see like street samurai doing the two sword thing, but then they go, I'm gonna Diecoat my shit. So they always do this, and it's always really expensive. And so they'll Diecoat just about anything they can get their hands on, So that's the other thing. And then you've got the DMSO, which, again, the picture, who gives a fuck, but then you've got the street index it's not that illegal. But yeah, it's got all these, they know what they were doing in this book. Because they got this whole chapter on the fucking evil shit you can put in here. Atropine, cyanide. There's straight up cyanide. There's shit called hyper kamikaze. Kamikaze is, well, that's something you take. That's like Jet in Fallout. It's just like it's like injecting yourself with the rage virus. That's what you give the guy with the dye-coated katanas. Like, you inject him with fucking kamikaze, and you're like, go kill him. No. MAO. There's some shit called there's actually, this is compound. There's viruses. There's like genetically engineered viruses you can get if you got a guy who knows what he's doing. If you got a guy with like biotech skill, you've got Doom. You get the virus Doom. You put that with the fucking carcerans. You got Doom. Was that bad? It's Doom. Fuck. And Street Samurai Catalog. The guy's got a sword. He's got a fucking plasma rifle of shit, and he got a sword. Why does he need a sword? I don't know, but he's a samurai, right? And there's a fucking zombie behind him. That's why he's got a sword, because there's a zombie, and I don't know where he is, but like, yeah. Yeah, so you need a sword, and this is just cars and shotguns and bullets. You go shopping, and this is it. So yeah, it's pretty much like the best game ever. Anyway, I started off with a tangent, but yeah. So this, I kind of have to go around starting off by explaining how this story, explaining the structure of adventures before starting the story, and this shouldn't take long, actually. I've actually gone over something like this before when I've talked about rangers. How adventures can stall sometimes when it comes to rangers following tracks. Well, for instance, like, a lot of adventures will hinge, like, let's say, you've got, this is typical stuff, like, a farm gets attacked or a wagon gets attacked. They're trying to track some orcs into the woods. They're trying to track somebody, track somebody going somewhere. The ranger's like, this is what I do. Okay, so he specializes in tracking. He's the only guy who really does this because he's the ranger. The ranger does this. So he goes, okay, I look for tracks. And the DM goes, roll your tracking. And this isn't a problem because he's got fucking plus 3 zillion in tracking. And he rolls a 1. Now, even in 3rd edition, 4th edition, that's not a botch, actually. 1, you still add your skill, and usually that means a success. But, that still fails most times, because it's not 3 zillion, it's plus 8. So, unless it's absurdly easy to follow these tracks, in the orcs case, you should just give it to them, because orcs don't bother to hide their tracks. But in case it's anyone remotely competent, you're not going to find it. So if they botch just utterly, and in most cases, with your luck, they have, they're not going to find anything. And then the second most competent guy, who's usually just the wizard, who has no fucking skill in this shit, he's just like, okay, I'll look. And then he rolls a 2, and then I can't find shit. And so the DM is just like, well, fuck, I don't know. So the DM, as the DM, you need not to have it be so absolute. You need to not think of it as they either find something or they don't find something. They always find something. It's just a matter of how long it takes and how efficient the tracking is. You can't let yourself guess. Otherwise, you have no adventure. They don't find anything. And then you have to make up bullshit. Because otherwise they don't go anywhere and you're just you're sitting around playing with yourself. Because then you have to make shit up. You get attacked by a guy who just appears, and then you're making bullshit up. So they find something. You're like, oh yeah, you find after several hours you manage to find tracks. You have to circle around for hours, but yeah, you find tracks. So anyway, my point. I just went over the whole story again, but my point is, there's another way this will fuck you in the ass when you're a DM, and this is the story. In Dungeons & Dragons, and this will relate to Shadowrun, in any RPG really, there comes a time when you need to be stealthy. This happens a lot, actually. In fact, you always want to start out as stealthy as possible, because when you go in guns blazing or sword swinging, you wake up everybody in the house. You don't want to do that because there's 5 of you and 300 of them. It's not good odds. So you always want to start off as quietly as possible, for no other reason as to have your thieves or whatever, so, to wipe out as many as possible before initiative, and to get initiative first. Sensible, yes? Problem. If you get caught, you're fucked. You're just fucked. For several reasons. One, when your thief is going out on his own, his dick is hanging in the wind when he gets caught. He's gonna get mobbed. He's gonna get fucked. Fucked hard. His shit's gonna get pushed in. And ain't nobody gonna save his dumb ass. So, this is flawed for a few reasons. Several games are flawed. AD&D, one of my favorite game systems, I'll be the first to admit it's flawed. And the reason for this is, and some people will be like, well, that's the game. The reason for this is you have to roll twice. There's several different skills for thieves. There's 2 in this case. There's move silently and hide in shadows. Hide in shadows is obviously how not to be seen. Move silently is how not to be heard. So you can fail one, and so some people argue, and I think 3rd edition made it a little clearer, in that maybe they changed it, maybe they clarified it, maybe I just never read it right. But in 3rd edition, there was a skill called hide, and then there was a skill called sneak. Sneaking was just the act of moving without being detected. Okay, and then hiding was the act of staying somewhere and hiding motionless, or actually concealing a place, concealing several people, essentially camouflaging a place, hiding. So those were two different things, as in sneaking, but I think in AD&D those were like the act of sneaking without being seen or heard, you had to roll twice. And if you failed one, you still raised an alert. So if you hidden shadows, but you failed your move silently, they heard you, they just couldn't see you. So you still have a problem, in that you've still essentially started combat. They're just looking for you now, especially if they know there's somebody in the building or something like that. Bad times. Okay, so, and if you're moving silently but you're seen, well, okay, you're real quiet, but I see you. So it's really the key one is not being seen, but there's no way to know that until, you can't... Okay, so, and when you're dealing with Dungeons & Dragons, when you're dealing with any kind of real life, the act of moving anywhere without being seen is extraordinarily difficult. Now, we're dealing with a fantasy world in which ninjas and magic and wizards exist, but still, picture this in your mind. In any real to medieval, to even a world where magic and ninjas exist, we're still, picture this room. This is not an unrealistic dimensions for a size, and I'm not saying this is an unrealistic room for it, and I'm saying, the dimensions of this room, the landscape of it, is not unlike your average dungeon room. It's a fairly open area, 20 by 30, with a staircase going down a doorway out here. Somebody is not going to move unseen and unheard through this room unless they happen to be hiding around that door. And, it's possible someone's around that door. I highly doubt it. But unless they're real fucking sneaky, it's really going to be hard. So, this is my point. It's really hard to do this. So, until they get really, really high level, you have to be really good. Okay? So, in Dungeons & Dragons, it's kind of understandable to be caught, because a thief is just a guy. Okay? This leads me to Shadowrun, where it's much, much easier to be absurdly quiet, because now it's not just magic. Because even in a fantasy setting, there's actually not a lot of help when it comes to magic. At least not that I can remember. Not in AD&D. There wasn't a spell many magic users could cast on a thief. Be like, you're quiet now. They could maybe put a guy to sleep or something like that. But it wasn't until 3rd edition where you could kind of give a guy some buffs. You could cast a spell called Cat's Grace to give him higher dexterity, which was really just a +1. There was cantrips, I think you could make them quieter, but even then it wasn't really much help. There was a silent spell, but even that kind of gave it away, because when you cast the silent spell, it made the entire area completely silent. So it didn't just make the thief silent, it made the entire room silent. So if there was any kind of conversation, it was like the cone of silence had descended upon the room. It was fair. People would still, the silent alarm would still be tripped, and people were like, they'd be looking for you. Anyway, so in Shadowrun, it actually made a lot more sense for people to be extremely quiet, because now you not only had magic in several different varieties. You had shaman magic, actually several gods devoted to being sneaky, or not gods, like spirits, like cats and shit like that. You had 2 different kinds of magic, but you had cyberware specifically devoted to making you quiet. You literally had cybernetic legs with absorbent padding on the feet to make you silent. Pretty cool. You had ninjas. You had cyborg ninjas who were specifically designed to be completely silent, and you literally had microchips that you could plug into your brain like The Matrix, and this predated The Matrix, as in the movie The Matrix, you had these microchips you could plug into your brain and get instant mastery of how to be completely silent, like how to sneak like a ninja. Like, because they would actually have, like, they would have a real ninja and, like, download his entire neural skill set into a microchip and then sell it. This is the world that Shadowrun is you could download anything into a microchip, like anything, and then plug it in if you have enough money. Now, microchips that contain physical abilities cost a lot more, but you could still do it. You know, so you could learn how to sword fight, you could learn jujitsu. It was really expensive. You could do it. Now, learning, like, you could get a language chip, like you could learn Japanese at a really high level, and you could plug it was way cheaper, because it's just like, it's language, you know, it's a lot more syntactical. It's not like muscle memory, stuff like that. Anyway, so it's actually a lot more feasible that you could be absurdly silent. So stealth missions are a lot more common in Shadowrun. And so this is why Shadowrunners are hired in Shadowrun. You know, this is why you do them, is because they're sneaky. You know, you get them because they are the places they're breaking into are highly fortified. They are absolutely top to bottom, left to right, locked down with the highest possible technological and magical security. You know, you need guys who can evade magical, technological, living security, like, you know, guard dogs, people, lasers, cameras, like fucking elementals, robots, drones, helicopters. You need these guys who can sneak past all of this shit, and you need guys who can kill all of this shit in the unlikely event they get caught. And getting caught is the problem, isn't it? Because when you get caught, you're fucked. And so it's how they deal with getting caught that's the problem. And this is the story of this. This is partially the DM's fault, and this is partially the group's fault. This is not one of the better sessions that I've ever had. Okay. In this particular case, I had this really good adventure lined up. I was very proud of myself for this one. In this case, I had this really cool mission where they get hired by what's called a Johnson, who is basically a corporate guy who prefers to be, it's like kind of an Agent Smith type guy, who just prefers to be called Mr. Johnson. They all prefer to be called Mr. Johnson because it's anonymous. Nobody asks their name because it's not important. It's just, they're basically the guy with the money. You know, and so Mr. Johnson says, I want you to break into this museum, and I want you to steal the showcase exhibit. Actually, he didn't even say the showcase. I want you to break into the museum, which is really like, and steal this Chinese. Break into like the Chinese exhibit and steal this. Not like the Dead Sea Scrolls, but like this series of scrolls from this exhibit. He says, I don't know where in the exhibit it is, but you're gonna have to find it. You know, it's one of these many scrolls. And he tells them the name of it. He's like, I don't expect you to know which one it is, but here's a picture. And so he gives them a picture of the scrolls. He's like, just find this. Don't touch them directly, but you should like make sure they're not damaged. Don't touch them with your bare hands. It's very important. And don't subject them to like direct sunlight, you know, stuff like that. He's like, because these are very, very fragile. And if you destroy them, it's your ass. It's like, seriously, like, if you destroy these things, we will, like, one of the typical corporate threats, like, not only will we kill you, we'll kill you by inches, and we'll pay you an absurd amount of money, you know. And what they don't know is that the guy hiring them is actually a dragon. And before you start laughing, this is actually something that's very common in Shadowrun, or at least, this is something that happens in Shadowrun. For those of you who are just joining us, what Shadowrun is it's a cyberpunk... My chair is squeaky, I'm sorry about that. Shadowrun is a dystopian future cyberpunk game in which people can graft cybernetics onto their bodies, which usually consists of people having Wolverine claws. They can download skills and shit, and there's magic that exists as well. What this also means is that there's magic, and there's been what's called the awakening. There's been a merging of this realm and basically the fairy realm. Mythical creatures have been spilling into the world. Creatures have awoken from ancient times. People have actually turned into mythical creatures, or at least kind of mutated into them. So there's trolls, orcs, dwarves, elves. So this is kind of a meeting of cybernetics and fantasy. And there are dragons. Not many, but there are dragons. So these dragons are virtually unkillable. Not completely unkillable, but they are virtually unkillable. And they're also treacherous. They're basically as close to gods as one can get on this earth. They're also completely treacherous, duplicitous, one of those things with grudges millennia in the making, and you can never trust them, which is why one of the most famous sayings in Shadowrun is never cut a deal with a dragon. So had they known it was a dragon, they would never have agreed to this, which is why I never told them. Which is why the dragon, they have magic enough they can disguise themselves as this, and they didn't really have any magic talent with them anyway. So I'm like, eh. And what they didn't know is that they were stealing scrolls that were precious to this dragon, which was a Chinese dragon. The content of the scrolls is unimportant, as it usually is in Shadowrun, because Shadowrun is almost always it might as well just be like a black suitcase that they never open. And in fact, if they open the suitcase, which they almost always do, you really don't want to know what's in it. They should just hand over the suitcase, get their money. But that's the fun of Shadowrun, is they open the suitcase and then the adventure begins. Anyway, they never got that far. So, what was really interesting about this, they knew something was up. Because Shadowrunners almost always get asked to, get hired rather, to break into science labs, skyscrapers, arcologies. It's usually labs, high security facilities, corporate office buildings. They get asked to go into, secret corporate facilities and kidnap somebody, extract somebody who's been taken prisoner, kill somebody, interrogate somebody. They don't get asked to break into into museums. They don't get asked to break into a city building and steal a piece of art. And not even an art, just a scroll. So they knew something was up. They figured it had something to do with magical significance. So they kind of went around and they did some preliminary research, mainly to ask if it was, if anyone had heard of this shit. And yeah, they were they figured, they asked around, but they kind of biffed none of them were exactly the charismatic sort, so they didn't get very far. And they kind of pieced together it had something to do with dragons, but they completely misinterpreted it. The players themselves misinterpreted it as basically they figured that the scrolls were trying to manipulate a dragon. Not that the dragon was going to do something in particular with it. Basically, okay, if you want to know, the dragon contained the scrolls contained the true name of another dragon, which in magical circles, true names of something can be used to manipulate somebody. So this dragon had a grudge against another dragon. It was going to get the true name of that dragon to do shit with it because it had, had a grudge. Anyway, so they figured that it was going to be used to, some guy was going to use it to summon a dragon or something. They it has a spell on it, and they were half right. Kind of. They weren't really close. They figured it was whatever. it doesn't matter. It didn't get that far. They weren't spooked enough by it. They didn't figure that this Johnson guy was a dragon. So in a way they were right, and in a big way they were wrong. But seriously, even if they knew it was a dragon and they went ahead with it anyway, again, doesn't matter because it wasn't the dragon that screwed them. So forget what I'm saying. So this was, like I said, this was an interesting adventure because they were they're turning over the motives in their heads. They were wrong, but they're turning over the motives in their heads, and for the first time, they're actually wow, we're doing something we're not normally used to doing. We're breaking into this kind of an unusual place, and so normally they're used to the maps that they're usually dealing with are very unimaginative. They're usually very square, blocky, cubicle-oriented buildings. It's usually those really boring shooters you play, those dime a dozen shooters like Syndicate on the Xbox 360, which, they call them hallway shooters, like The Bureau, where you're stuck in a hallway and you go ahead. It's typical corporate fluorescent white lighting and gray cubicles and gray hallways, and patrolled by the same corporate cybered up security guards and drones and shooting out, disabling security cameras and very corporate stuff. In fact, almost if there's any kind of flaw to Shadowrun is that it's very hard sometimes to make each adventure seem distinct. So you've got to make it so you're not always okay, break into this corporate building and extract a scientist. Break into this corporate building and extract a microchip from this computer. You've got to have them run around and do some shit. Do different shit. It actually helps when you have them do different stuff. That's a big thing. In fact, try to keep them away from corporate shit altogether. It helps, because when you have them fuck with corporations, they make enemies, because I guarantee you they'll get caught. Because they got caught. And honestly, I did this because it was an early adventure, and they weren't very good yet, because they're starting level characters. So I was like, if they break into a civic building, it's not going to have very good security, because the city's kind of shit. It's not the city that has money. The city's basically bankrupt. It's the corporations that run the city, but the corporations don't give a shit about museums. And the corporations do fund the museum, but it's whatever. Anyway, so it's a civic building. My point is that it kind of had Bush League as far as security cameras, whatever goes. It was kind of Bush League. I was like, this for them should be an adventure they could handle. You can see where I'm going with this. They should be able to handle this. This will be a good introductory adventure. It was their first adventure. Ha. So, the first thing they did wrong was they didn't case the place. Had they done this, they at least would have had an idea of the floor plan. They would have at least had an idea of where the security cameras were, what kind of security was around the exhibit. And the answer is not much. Because as I said, this wasn't the main exhibit. Which again was not the question they asked. They didn't ask the dragon. They didn't ask Mr. Johnson was okay, where is this exhibit? He's I'm not exactly sure where. But which should have been a tip-off that it wasn't the major exhibit, but they were okay. They kind of assumed it was the major exhibit, but again, they weren't that swift on the uptake. This was their first adventure, so I guess I should excuse them for that, but anyway. As soon as they kind of stuck their head in through the window, they were oh, this isn't it, so they kind of circled around, because there wasn't much to see, and so they finally find the exhibit, but they should have cased the place. They could have gone in and just walked around, during the light of day. They would have looked really weird they could have put their shotguns away, I guess, but still, hey, you have this group of just imagine these guys walking around a museum in their fucking dusters, and these guys look fucking jacked up, and they're just fucking chromed up and dangling with just fucking crazy. These, you know how these guys look. You got a gang member who's like fucking tattooed like crazy, and these guys who so don't look like, they look like cyberpunks. These guys so don't look like the kind of guys. They would look like they're casing the place, but whatever, I didn't care. But they weren't casing the place. But anyway, I was like, this exhibit is just kind of one that's been sitting around for a while, which is why the dragon in question, the dragon that was about to be kind of taken out by this, didn't know this was coming, because this exhibit had been there forever, and this is why it was an introductory adventure, and this is why I was like, this would actually be kind of a good distraction, because I was actually hoping that this would be something that they could use, was maybe they could kind of set a diversion to the main exhibit. And I forget what the main exhibit was, like the Hope Diamond or whatever like that, like they might have been able to use that as a distraction or a diversion to maybe like make it look like, draw the guards away and steal the other shit, because it would have been easy. Okay, so this is where we have to be stealthy. But it doesn't, like I said, casing the place, doesn't matter. It would have helped. But this is where when you're doing any kind of crime, real life or otherwise, it helps to prepare. Not that I'm endorsing you do any kind of crime, but in Shadowrun you are doing inherently illegal activities. Prepare. So, at least case the place, okay? Ask around. The thing is, they actually did have a guy who knew how to use computers. This was before I knew my rule of never have deckers. Because I was going to have the guy, the guy was actually going to go into not the matrix, but go into the intranet of the museum and take down the cameras. So, which wasn't actually that big a deal, because I just had to be a really simple, again, civic building, not really have that big. It had no black ice, it had no major. It just kind of had alarms. It's just like if you completely fucked up, it would trip the alarms. So, so this is where the sneaking begins. So they start off, and thank God they went at night. At least they got one thing right. And so they decide that they're gonna go in through the roof. And so there's actually a bunch of skylights, and so they figure, okay, we're gonna go in through the roof, and we're gonna try to jimmy open the skylight. And so they have the decker who actually has a fair amount of thieving ability. They check to see if there's kind of a alarm tape or whatever rigged up to the alarm. He checks. There's not. It makes the well, there is, but he does his thing. He pops the thing, and so they go in there and they basically do like a GoldenEye thing where they kind of lever themselves not into the bathroom, but they level themselves into they rappel down into like a concourse. So then what they do is they go into, essentially they hack into a public terminal, like an info terminal. So that's where the Decker does his thing. So he goes in there and he downloads a map of the building, which is where they're like, the reason they went into the concourse is so they could sneak directly into the center. There's like, there's 4 wings. It's shaped like kind of a plus. So they're like, okay, we're gonna go into the center where the exhibit is, and so they go plug. So they figure like, okay, we're gonna plug into the public terminal, which would be a great backdoor into the exhibit. So it downloads the map, which they could have done from a phone booth. It's publicly accessible information. So he fucking has to hack into the public terminal, which again, he could have just like he could have just like tapped the screen and be like, welcome to the Seattle Museum of Natural History. Would you like a map? And he'd be like, yes. No, he has to hack it. he plugs his brain in there and defeats the initial security. He's like, give me a map. And he's like, okay, I have a map. Sometimes it takes the hard way. Boop. But he gets the fucking map. And they're like, oh shit, we have to go around to the south wing. So then they have to climb back up the fucking skyline. And they have to break in the other skylight to the southern concourse. They rappel down to the southern concourse. I love these guys. He plugs into the other info terminal, breaks into that security, and so he's like, "Okay, I've broken into the the larger network through the info terminal." So I'm like, "Okay, I'm drawing a map," and the other guys are just sitting around going like, "Boring. Is there anything we could be doing?" And they're like, I'm like, "Sure, you could be, I don't know, is there anything you could be doing?" And they're like, "Well, let's, we could, we definitely should be like, I know what we could do. We could definitely be like keeping a lookout for security guards." And I'm like, that's a fucking good idea. So they start, like, one thing they do is they actually had a pretty good idea. You know, in D&D, there's what's called spiking the doors, where you essentially nail the doors shut so nobody comes in behind you. Or when you're running away from something, you spike the doors so nobody can follow you. So basically what they do is they're kind of like putting crowbars into the door handle, so if there is a guard, he doesn't just like walk in on them. They're like, what the fuck, it's locked. So they're not crowbarring the doors, and not in every case, but they're kind of jimmying the door shut or breaking the lock. So I'm like, okay, you can do that. And so I'm like, right away I'm trying to think like, okay, are there alarms on the doors that would kind of like, if they're breaking the lock with this? I'm like, not really. They're interior doors to like public exhibits. And there wouldn't be, and so I'm like, fuck it. I'm being nice already. So like, okay, so he's hacking in through the info terminal, and like, so he goes, okay, so I found the exhibit, right? And I go, yeah. So the first thing you're going to notice is that there's several cameras in the room, and there's one camera covering the interior door, and there's one camera covering the approach to the exhibit, and there's one camera on the exhibit, and there's one camera directly on top of the case containing the scrolls, like a glass case containing the scrolls. You know the setup. So like, and he said, and he goes, okay. So I'm like, I draw on the map kind of the, where the cameras are going, and so I start to disable the cameras, and so I go, well, pick which one you want. And so he goes, okay. So I do the one covering the door because we got to get in. So I go, okay, roll. He disables that one. He goes, okay, now I figure we should do the one, the approach to the case. Okay. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So I go, so yeah, and so he does that one, and he gets that one. And so then he goes, the third one is the third one is the one covering like the entire room, because he's like, okay, the third one is like, if there's a security guard watching the monitors and he sees there's someone in the room, then we should definitely take that one out. The one that's on top of the case, that's the least likely one that they'll check. So I'm like, that's good thinking. This guy's actually thinking. So I'm like, okay, if there's one in the case, they're not likely to miss that one. And so the thing is, when I say they're taking it out, there's software that can actually, he's looping it. You know what I mean? He's looping the footage. So I'm like, he's not just shutting them down. Because, you know what I mean? Because if you just took them out, that would be like even more, you know what I mean? So, so he rolls and he doesn't botch, but he fails. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, you start to you trigger not you don't trigger the alarm, but you trigger an authorization failure. So it goes, please resubmit your authorization. So basically, I give him 3 tries. So he's like, oh shit. So I try again. He fails. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, you might want to back out now. And he goes, I don't know. Well, we gotta get rid of this, right? And I'm like, yeah. So he goes, well, what? He asked the guys. He's like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Because like so they go, well, I guess we could. So the guy who's going to sneak in there, the street samurai, the physad. The physad is the physical adept, who's essentially their ninja. A physical adept is kind of a guy who, like a monk, kind of like the bulletproof monk. Actually, that's not a bad analogy. Basically, a guy who actually does know how to do like chi stuff. He's imbued with magic, and so basically their main thing is they have what's called killing hands, so they can imbue their strikes with chi, so they can actually like kill you with chi strikes. So they can do other things with it too. They can carry weapons, which they can imbue with chi and kill you with those. But you get my point. They can do things with chi that make themselves bulletproof. Basically, they were one of the most broken classes in Shadowrun, in that they could essentially do like almost everything Street Samurai could do, but they could do it without having cyberware. So like they're like, oh, a Street Samurai's like, I have dermal plating, I have steel under my skin. The guy's like, yeah, shoot me in the chest. I work out, So like the physad is like, oh, I'm fucking stealthy as shit. So he's like, I'll be real fast. And so this is what the guy does. And so he's like, I know how to do this shit. I know, he knows electronics. And so he's like, okay. Trust me, this guy knew how to do this shit. So he's like, I know electronics. I believe it or not, the physad knew how to do electronics. And so he's like, I'll get us through it. So he goes, okay. So so he and the Decker, they go, okay. So he's like, I'm not gonna do it a third time because shit. So the Decker is like, I'm gonna stay here and I'm gonna try to monitor what's going on with the security guards. So he actually kind of he's like, I'm gonna see if anyone is. I'm just gonna keep an eye out. So the physad goes in there and he makes his stealth roll, and so he makes his stealth roll and he like basically just like runs real fast. He's like, I gotta hurry. So like every round now, it doesn't matter how stealthy he's being, he's on camera, because like you're not fucking invisible, bro. I'm basically just determining how like what I'm doing is like I'm giving the guards in the security room a penalty to notice him, because he's doing well. So like I'm rolling every turn that he's in the room for the guards to notice him, because they're not like watching like a hawk. It's like it's one of the least popular exhibits in the room, so they're like occasionally glancing. So like every turn I'm like whatever. So like they don't notice him, and so he's like, I run up and I look over there and I do the thing and I go, okay, what's the case look like? And I go, well, it's a glass case, and you see that there's you see on the pedestal there's you see a set of 4 scrolls on top of there's a set of 4 scrolls and a little glass enclosure on top of a wooden pedestal on top of a metal plate. And the guy's like, I've seen this movie. It's a pressure plate. So he's like, all right. So I'm gonna look for like an access hatch in the pedestal, and I'm gonna override the fucking pressure plate. And I'm like, okay. So he goes there and he rolls and he overrides the pressure plate. And so, unfortunately, he didn't look for the other thing. He just like, he just kind of assumed that was the only thing. It wasn't the only thing. So, yeah, he did not correctly assume that there wasn't another security measure on there. In that just the fact that the fucking hinge on the case itself was trapped. Because he goes, "Is the case locked?" Because I say, "Oh, well," he goes, "Well, how's it open?" I go, "Well, it's just a hinge on the case." He goes, "Is it locked?" And I go, "No." He goes, "Okay, well," he's like, so I'm like, he's like, I'm sure the pressure plate's disengaged, right? And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, I swing the hinge open, and I put my gloves on, and I shove the. I go, "Oh God." You flip the hinge open and... The Decker, meanwhile, is like, "Ah, shit!" Like, it's almost like having the stethoscope on. You're listening to a guy's heart, and he just, like, picks it up and starts screaming, "Ah!" He's like, "Oh, fuck, what the fuck is going on?" The guy, there's like alarms screaming in his brain. "Ah, what the fuck?" So, now they're fucked. They're fucked. Here's their second problem. They run... The rest of the group... The phys ed comes running out of the door, back into the concourse. And they're like, "What the fuck did you do?" And the guy's like, "I opened the case. I disabled the pressure plate. I don't know what the fuck happened." I'm like, "Are you sure you did it right?" He's like, I did it right. I rolled like a blah blah. I rolled like 4 successes." Like, they're looking at me like I'm the asshole. And I go... And they're like, "How many successes did you need?" And I'm like, I don't know. And so they start yelling at the Decker. They're like, "Disable the alarm!" And I'm like, "You should be really climbing up the rope right now." So, like, meanwhile, the security guards are, like, calling the police, and, one of them is going to investigate, because as soon as the alarm goes off, they look up and they see the fucking phys ed hauling ass over to the concourse, and so they know there's a fucking guy going over there. And so, instead of... I don't know what the fuck they're thinking, but, like, instead... Well, I learned what they were thinking. Later on, I learned what they were fucking thinking. Okay. But, like, this is... To this day, it baffles me. But, like, I don't know. I don't know if I explained it poorly, or, like, maybe if, like... Maybe if they got the wrong... Maybe they got the wrong perception. I thought, like, they were pretty sure what goes on in Shadowrun, or what, but, like... I should probably take the blame for this, because if so, I probably... Like, because they be... Anyway. They should have just run, but they didn't run. Instead, they start, like... They tell the Decker, like, "Oh, disable the alarm!" Like, they're probably calling the police! Like, stop the... They're like, because you could disable the phones. So, like, stop this, disable the phones! So the guy's like, "Okay, I'll try to disable the phones." He fucks it up. So he doesn't disable the phones. And if anything, he lights up the phones even worse. So he's like, "Alright, fucked it up." And so he pulls the wire out of his head. Meanwhile, security guard is, like, kicking at the door. These guys, they're like, they hear the guy kicking at the door. They start unloading shotguns through the door. I'm like, "You're not helping." I'm like, in fact, I'm just telling them, like, you should run. And so they're like, they don't answer me. They're like, we start, one of the guys hides behind the, like, info terminal. Another guy's like, I try to make some cover. I'm like, with what? And they go, well, there's gotta be like couches here, right? This is like a public concourse. Like, what's in here? And I'm like, well, there's like public exhibits. There's like a ticket booth and shit like that. And, so they're like, okay, we hide behind that. So okay. So the security guards there's like 5 security guards. They start getting together because they start hearing gunfire. They call the police, which only takes a few rounds because there's like a hot button to the police. So the security guards all start getting together and there's a firefight. And so the firefight doesn't last long because these guys aren't armed very well and they don't really have that much in the way of cybernetics, and they're facing basically like a paramilitary group. So they kill one of them, they injure 2, and so the rest of them surrender because they don't get paid enough for this shit. They're security guards. So they're like, these guys are armed with like 44 magnums, and these guys, as soon as the phys ad gets shot in the face, and he's like, pung, that mildly irritated me. The guy's bulletproof, essentially. It takes like an anti-tank rifle to stagger this guy. The security guards throw their guns down. And so I'm like, okay guys, firefight's over. They say this. They're like, they take one of the guys, and I'm like, okay, who's the most hurt? And I'm like, what? They go, which one of these guys is hurt the most? And I go like, well, you took like a dragon. Which one of you guys loaded your shotgun with dragon's breath rounds? And the fucking not rigger, not the decker, shit. One of the guys. I can't remember. One of the guys was like, dragon's breath rounds. It was, one of the guys had dragon's breath rounds in his fucking shotgun. And so he's like, I have a dragon's breath. It was the fucking elf. The fucking elf had dragon's breath rounds. And so like, yeah, I know, I said I'd never do that, just call the guy by his race, like, he's the elf. Yeah, he was the fucking elf. I don't know what he did. He was the fucking elf. So, he's like, a load of dragon's breath rounds. He's like, you like it? They cost like $20 each, but they're worth it. And I'm like, so he's like, which one of you motherfuckers shot the guy in the knee with a dragon's breath round? His leg is like fucking gone. He's like, okay, I grab that guy and I punch him in his burnt stump. And I'm like, why? I'm like, the guy fucking screams so at such a high pitch, only fucking dogs could hear it. And I started asking him, who else is in the building? And he's like, ah! I punch him again. Who else is in the fucking building? And he's like, there's like 2 janitors and they work in the north wing. And he's like, you guys go get him. And I'm like, so I'm like, so they're like, they're not even trying to be stealthy no more. They start fucking kicking down doors. And I'm like, all right, where's these fucking janitors? And so I'm like, they're locked in a closet because they heard a fucking 2-minute pitched firefight. And they're like, we kicked down the door to the janitor's closet. They put up a fight, and they're like, no, they don't put up a fight. They fucking surrender immediately, and they start begging you not to hurt them. So like, okay, we take them back, and we don't got anything to tie them up with, so we'll just like throw them in the corner. We'll tell them don't fucking move. So like, so they take them to the main, like they go to the main entrance. They haul everyone over the main entrance, and they're like, okay, what's going on out there? And so they're like, I'm like, by this time, the fucking cops have showed up. And they're like, okay, the cops? So everyone else, they tell the Decker to start, like, locking down the entrances because, like, there's, like, security shutters, but the shutters have already been deployed, obviously, but they're they're like basically like do what you can to like make sure nobody can fucking hack them. So they're like, I'm like, oh, whatever. So I'm doing that. And they're like, if any of the police try to hack them, you need to fight them. So, you know, I'm like, I don't know what you guys are doing. So they're like, we need to find a way out of here. And I'm like, you had a way out of here? And I'm like, they're like, no, we needed to find everyone in this building. I'm like, you needed to find everyone in this building? And they're like, yeah, we need to keep the cops busy. And so they're like, we need to, they're like, somebody get on the phone. Like, we need to get on the phone with these cops, okay? So they're like, one of them gets on the phone to the police and they're like, we want to talk to whoever's like in charge of this. So meanwhile, one of them is like I start like making masks or something like that. And like, you know, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? You want to find a way out of here, but you wanted to find him. So like, I'm like, this is going a really fucking bizarre direction here, you know, obviously. So I'm like, okay, well, yeah, the fucking cops have fucking surrounded the block, and they're like, okay, well, who? I'm like, okay, this is Sergeant Donovan. Who the fuck am I talking to? And they put the biggest, baddest, ugliest fucker on the phone, and the guy was like, I can't remember his name. He's like, this is Kilgore. And they're like, we got some demands. I'm like, you got demands? And Donovan's like, you got demands? What the fuck are you doing in a fucking museum? And they're like, listen here, we got 7 hostages. And he's like, we're not prepared. It was like, we got 7 hostages, and we're not afraid to kill every last one of them. So if you want to see any of them walk out of here alive, you're gonna do what we say and give us what we want. I just inverted their voices. I'm sorry about that. Like, if you're not prepared to do it, if you want to see them walk out of here alive, you're gonna give us what we want. Sorry, it's late. So the guy's like, well, what do you want? So they start asking for they start asking for the typical stuff. You know, like, we want a helicopter to get us out of here. And the guy's like, you're not going to get out of here. You realize that. And so, like, he's just trying to keep him on the phone. And I'm like, why are you stalling with these guys? I don't get this. So, well, I get this. They're trying to find a way out of here, but I really don't. So the Decker, meanwhile, they're telling the Decker to try to find a way out of here, looking for the floor plan. They're like, does the map that you downloaded tell us of another way out of here? And so they're really trying to hit me on this point. They're like, is there another way out of here on this map? Like a way that's like another way? And I go, no. Like there's the obvious public entrances in and out. There's like fire exits, but those are publicly marked as well. And the police would be watching those. And they're like, come on, man. Like, I rolled like 8 successes on this. Come on. And I'm like, I'm not fucking with you. This is like a public map of the library. This is like, you got this from an info terminal. This is all this thing. This is like what they would fucking hand you if you walked into the museum. This is like if you went to the zoo and they handed you a pamphlet that had the map on it. This is the kind of thing that would have like a cartoon elephant on it. It doesn't have secret doors marked on it, you asshole. But they're like, 8 successes! And I'm like, you can roll 800 successes, dickweed! And I'm like, the cartoon elephants aren't gonna like reveal a secret fucking door! What do you want from me? So they start asking for. They're like, these people are gonna get hungry real soon. You better start delivering some food in here. And then he starts saying he's like, if you don't give us some food within the hour, we're gonna start throwing bodies out the front door every 15 minutes. And then the sergeant calls his bluff. He's like, you're not gonna do anything. He's like, you're in there and you're scared. He's like, even if you got a helicopter, where are you gonna go? You're not gonna go. So he's like, just let the people go when you walk out of here. He walks up to the first fucking security guard, puts a gun to his head, pulls the trigger, boom, blows his head off. And I'm like, oh my god! That's what I said. I was like, oh my god! And so, and he's like, do you hear that? That was the first one. This is the second. Boom! And I'm like, what the fuck? And so he literally opens the door and starts pitching bodies out of it. He's like, you want any more? And I'm like, and nobody in the group is horrified by this. Nobody. They're like, fucking A. And I'm like, what the fuck is with these people? And so right now, in a police situation, in any real life police situation, you're done negotiating. This is when they started, like, the negotiations are over. So as soon as they got a good look, as soon as he opened the door and you see this fucking 10-foot tall troll who's cybered up to the ass start throwing bodies out like footballs, the police, who are actually fairly heavily armed, they're like, they see this guy who's built like a Sherman tank. Like, again, literally built with, who weighs and is built like a Sherman tank. I'm actually not abusing the term literally there. He pretty much is armed like a Sherman tank. So they're like, okay. So these guys are pretty much insane, and they're essentially like a paramilitary group. So the guy is like, okay, now we'll keep them talking because we need to send in the Cyber Psycho Squad. The Cyber Psycho Squad is something I borrowed from Cyberpunk 2020, which is one of my favorite concepts. It's essentially the DM's finger of God. I like fingers of God because when games get out of hand, you need those. The game has now gotten out of hand, and I need it. The Cyber Psycho Squad is, very briefly, when you have gone cyber psycho. In Cyberpunk 2020, Cyber Psycho is when you have run out of humanity. When you get cyber tech, you lose humanity. Humanity is essentially your empathy. It's your limit on how much cyberware you can have. When you run out of humanity, you have essentially become Borg. And at that point, you no longer have any empathy towards humanity. You have gone psychotic. So, more often than not, you become a crazed psycho killer. Qu'est-ce que c'est? So, the Cyber Psycho Squad is basically the elite of the elite of the elite police unit, trained specifically and armed specifically to take down cyber psychos. Basically, they're like Hulkbusters. They're like dudes in powered armor. They're essentially cyber psychos themselves. They're like this close to it. In fact, many of them are like rehabilitated cyber psychos who have been like pressed into service, or like reprogrammed cyber psychos. So like these guys are fucking insane. And when you have to call them in, you can pretty much kiss the entire block goodbye. So like you don't call them in lightly. So like these guys are clearly insane. The guys are throwing bodies out, and so like when you've got there's easily like 5 of these guys in there, and so they're like, okay, they're killing hostages, and we don't want to lose any of our guys going in after them. We better call these guys in. So they're like, okay, 5 minutes, we get these guys in here by chopper. So I'm like, I can't believe I have to do this on their first adventure, but like this is already out of hand. So finally, I'm just like, fuck it. I just tell the Decker, I'm like, okay, you're using a tourist map of the building. I pull on his eyes like, come here. He's like, you need to go into the like you need to get out of this system and go into like the city municipal grid and like pull up like city blueprints of this block. And you need to find like public blueprints of this block, not the fucking elephant logo. So he's like, oh. So he's like, finally, like, okay. So he's like, okay, no, there's a fucking, and I'm essentially making this up. I'm like, okay, in the basement, there's a sewer entrance. He's like, I don't know where though. So they fucking ask the janitor, because they're like, okay, well, they put a gun to the janitor's head, and they're like, there's an entrance to the sewer. Where is it? Where's the trigger? So the janitor's like, it's in the boiler room or whatever. So he's like, so the guy, of course, the guy with the highest intimidation is like, where is the sewer? He's like, it's in the boiler room. You gotta use this code. And the troll's like, thanks. Boom! Blows the janitor's head off. And they're like, I'm like, what the fuck? He told you where the code is! And I'm like, what the fuck? And the sergeant's still on the phone. And I'm like, what? The guy's like, what the fuck did he do that for? You know, he didn't hear the exchange about the sewer, but he heard the gunshot. You know, ring, ring. What the fuck did you do that for? The guy's like, boop, puts the phone down, and still nobody in the group is objecting to this. Apparently they talked about this beforehand. But yeah, boom! So finally they have an escape plan. You know, so they're like, okay, get ready, guys, we gotta go. So they're like, let's give them a demand to keep them busy or something like. So they say something out there. So what they start doing is they're like, okay, who's got some grenades? So they're like, oh yeah, they all got grenades. It's fucking Shadowrun. Of course they got grenades. So they're like, okay, who's got and they got stuff called like C16 or like C8 or something like that. Of course they do. So they're like, okay, wire the door to blow. So they wire the door to blow with enough C16 to, of course, level the block. Because of course I don't watch their character sheets. I'm just like, whatever. I'm like 16 at the time. What do you want from me? So I don't watch their sheets. They got backpacks full of stuff. So they wire the fucking door. And I'm like, okay. So they wire the doors. And they start pitching smoke grenades. They start pitching real grenades. Fucking cops are like, what the fuck? Better start putting make them go faster. So during this entire thing, they start hauling ass down there, throwing like mines behind them on the doors. And the last one, the troll, is like, he says, I start going down the line and start shooting every hostage in the face. Boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, what? I finally just go, what the fuck are you doing, man? What in the actual fuck? And he finally explains the whole thing to me. He looks at me. He finally explains the motive behind the entire thing. He looks at me and he goes, they've seen our faces, man. Wow. You know, you learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about people sometimes playing these games. You know what I said earlier about, like, if you're committing crimes, case the place? Okay, so this guy's not exactly the smartest motherfucker when he didn't case the place, but, like, how fucked up is it? I know exactly how fucked up it is, but, like, the minute they got caught, the second they got caught, this guy's first thought, and apparently a lot of their first thoughts, like because they were all on board with this, like right away. His first thought was, they got our faces on camera. They all gotta die. Holy shit. Holy shit. And wow. For like a theft. Wow. I'm like, do you realize what you've done? Like, you've killed like 9 people And that's not even counting the fucking cops. You've thrown grenades at cops. And by the way, as soon as you ran down the front door, the cops chased you through the... Boom. You just blew up the museum. I don't know how many cops you just killed there. Okay. The second thing, this leads to the... This is another lesson. Okay, and the thing is, okay, like... And I said the players were partially to blame here, and they are, but I take the blame for this. Because, like, maybe I didn't explain the setting to them adequately, because, like, maybe they were like, oh, if they've seen our faces, we're fucked, because, like, maybe this would have come back on the... Maybe this would have been, like, a source of embarrassment for the guy who hired us, or, like, maybe they'd have found us. Like, I don't know how good the police are at finding us, or, like, people would never hire us again, or something like that. I'm like, maybe I didn't explain how, or, maybe they weren't sure, or, I guess I could applaud the role-playing of it, but, like, at the same time, for a simple B&E job, they would have been in comparatively much... How much deeper shit are they in now after the fucking killing spree they just went on over a trespassing... They were really just breaking and entering. Burglary. No, they've seen our faces. Holy shit. Holy shit. Wow. That fucking escalated... That went from 0 to 100, like, holy shit, that got out of hand fast. So you might want to lay low forever, because you're definitely wanted for murder. Lots of them. It's like fucking Kilgore killed a guy. Man. He fucking punched a guy in his phosphorus incinerated stump. It's hardcore, yo. Like... And then, so, like, okay. Like, I don't even know where you... Assign blame how you will. I'll take it. But, like, here's where, like, there's a thing that, in baseball, there's something called the code. And the code is kind of a... It's just the way things go. It's kind of a... It's kind of a system of respect. And it's not necessarily respect, it's just kind of a enforcement. So when one is disrespected or even perceived as when someone is perceived as disrespected, or if someone is just like wronged, even unintentionally, there's payback. Or there's just what goes around comes around eventually. Sometimes immediately, or sometimes you just know that even if it's not your fault, you've got it coming. So you just got to stand there and take it. The code is kind of hard to define. The code exists in RPGs. So, while there's no one who believes in, like, I will never say, like, I believe that the relationship between the DM and the player should never be antagonistic. The DM should always be fair, okay? I actually believe that the DM should never be vindictive, because otherwise the game is not fair. Because otherwise, what's the point of playing? Otherwise you're just making shit up. Sometimes making shit up is necessary to keep the game moving, as you've just seen. Sometimes you've just got to poke the players and prod them, otherwise the game, either everyone dies or, the game goes nowhere. So making shit up is sometimes necessary, as is payback. Just because reminders are sometimes necessary, and because sometimes one must be reminded that who runs this game. So, I don't know if that made sense to you, but the referee, it is, the DM is still fair and impartial, but it's still at times the code must be enforced. I know that's that seems ludicrous. But let's just say this. You know, when okay, in baseball, if a guy hits a home run and then he stands there and watches it go, he watches it go over to the seats and he watches it for like 10 seconds, and then he runs around the bases. You've just done this to the pitcher. You've done it for 10 seconds. The next guy who goes up there, and this, fair or not, the next guy who goes up is going to get a fastball in the ribs. That's the code. Now, ideally, the guy who just watched the ball go for 10 seconds should be the one who gets it. Usually, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Usually it is. But, whatever. And usually the guy who did it knows it's coming. He'll still stand there and take it. That's kind of what's going on here. Know what I mean? Okay. So, these guys know. These guys know. They've just fucked my game up. You know what I mean? Like, they were acting in character. I don't blame them. I don't. They were acting in character. Okay. They did what they did. Okay, I get it. They had fun doing it. I had fun, believe it or not. I had fun doing it. They definitely took me off guard. Yeah, I had fun. I don't blame them. But guess what? It's on. Oh. Yeah, you fucked up my game. That's what I mean. I hope you had fun. You fucked my game up. You were in character. I don't blame you. I'm in character too. Because guess what? The cyber psychos are waiting in the sewer for you. You can't say I didn't plan that. You can't call bullshit on me. Can you? You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, you're around the corner, and guess what? There's about 5 of these guys waiting around the corner. They're the Cyber Psycho Squad. And they're like, oh shit. And their assholes dilate so tight that no light could possibly escape from them. Their assholes dilate so tight you could crush coal into diamonds. As well they should. And I'm loving it. And they're not all gonna die. Just most of them. And that's the point. That's the code. That's the code. That's what happens. So, that's the cyber psychos. And the thing is, you can't call bullshit on me for that. You really can't. Because I made, I fudged it. They'd have never found that sewer entrance without me, because I didn't plan that. I didn't plan on them getting caught in there. I didn't plan on them taking hostages. I didn't plan on them pitching bodies out the front fucking door. I didn't plan on them having to take a fucking escape route through the sewers. Even if they tripped an alarm, I thought they'd just smash and grab and run. That was the point. But no. They had to start fucking murdering janitors. Wow. So okay, I'll give you a way out. I'll give you another way out. You want to fuck with me? So okay, I'll make shit up. Guess what I'll also make up? I'll make up about 4 fucking street samurai harder than a fucking brick wall standing in your way. Get through that, shitheads. So they round that corner and they trip enough concussion mines to orbit Red Brown. They lose initiative and they get hammered with Dragon's Breath rounds themselves. It hurts. So the fight is on, And so they're fucking broken as shit, their broken as shit characters are in for the fight of their fucking lives. They get through it. 3/4 of them are dead. They get the point. And that's the story. The end. So, you can take that any way you want. I'm unfair. I wouldn't mind. That's just how it goes. You don't fuck up the DM story like that. You know what you're doing. You know. You fucking know what you're doing. You know what you're doing when you start pitching bodies out the front. When the DM starts doing this, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? You know you're fucking things up. When the DM is flat out telling you what you should be doing, and you're like, no. When the DM is like, you really should be going out the door right now. Like, when the DM is flat out telling you what you're doing is monumentally stupid. Because DMs don't do that. Like, we really don't. We don't tell you how to do your jobs unless you're doing something legendarily stupid. Or if you are, you shouldn't. Because we don't tell you how to, we just don't. We let you play the way you're doing things, unless you're acting in like a way aliens act. Just like, whoa! These guys were acting like natural-born killers. Like, fucking, even the natural, like, fucking, they'd have thought that was excessive. That was like the way the fucking Gecko brothers would act. Like, god damn. They left that place and they fucking blew up the museum. They nuked the place from orbit, not just to be sure, just because to blow it up on the way out. Just to take some cops with them. Like, was that just like to fuck the police? Like, whoa! So, like, you know what you were doing. I don't know if that was because, like, I don't know if that was to like, I don't know what that was. But, like, that wasn't, like, okay. So, that part of that was, like, I don't know if that was, that wasn't, the Squirt Gun Wars hadn't even happened yet. That was, Squirt Gun Wars happened later, but these guys, yeah. That was just a taste of what was to come. You learn a lot about people. Scary things about people sometimes. When you play these fucking games, you learn, more than anything, the game that you learn most about people is Vampire the Masquerade. Trust me. When you turn players loose on Vampire the Masquerade, you learn scary shit about what they're like. Like, whoa. Same guy, actually. Again, I will keep this short because I promise. But same fucker, dude. This guy, man. The guy who was killing, like the guy who was pulling the trigger on this guy. I was like, the first thing I did wrong was I was like, okay, I have probably told this. So again, I'll keep it brief. I initially made the mistake of like banning. He's this guy who like you don't tell him what you can't play. So the first thing I was like, you can't play Sabbat characters. Sabbat are kind of like the accepted bad guys of Vampire. They're basically the insane guys. Again, you're going to debate me on this, but they're the kind of they're the crazies of Vampire, the old Vampire Masquerade. So I'm like, okay, first off, guys, no Sabbat. And he's like, right away, he's got this rebel, he's rebelling. He's like, what do you mean no Sabbat? I'm like, just no Sabbat. I don't want any crazies in the group. Especially because if you Sabbat, none of the Camarilla guys will work with you. The Camarilla guys basically don't work with each other already. Like, basically I should have you all be one clan, and I'm not going to do that. But so, like, just no Sabbat. So he's like, fuck. So, like, first guy he rolls up is, and trust me, I'm not trying to be disgusting. Like, and this is not me being the guy making rape jokes. The first guy he rolls up, I'm not even kidding you, is a guy, I think he's a Ventru. He's a Ventru who has, there's a flaw called selective feeding or selective prey. Meaning that he has very picky feeding habits, in that he will only feed from a certain type of person. Okay? So, like, sometimes it's blondes, or sometimes it's like, this is a certain type of people. Sometimes it's only like, it's worth more points depending on how specific the tastes are. So, if it's men or women, it's not many points. If it's blondes or brunettes, it's worth. If it's blonde men or blonde women or something like that. So in his case, he chose like adolescent children. So he chose his character to be his character was like a not a guidance counselor, but like one of those some kind of like a big brother big sister type, like one of those guys who one of those types who works with kids all the time, not like, you know what I mean, who like in a boarding house or something like that. One of those guys who kind of like a deacon or something like that. So he's like basically he's this guy who like is in charge of in charge like 24/7 of little kids. And I'm like, are you fucking serious with this shit? And so his nature and demeanor, which is the vampire equivalent of alignment, is aberrant monster. Which is like the most evil motherfucker you can come up with. And right away, I'm like, really? You're just, like, this guy is just outright sabotaging me. I'm like, why are you I'm like, why? I got pissed. I was like, why are you even bothering to come here? If you're gonna, like, you're just really, like, why did you show up? I got pissed. I was like, why did you show up here if you're gonna bring me this shit? Like, this is fucking disgusting. And I told him to go away. I was like, just go. If you're gonna be pissy about it, just go. But no, and the thing, then he started insisting, like, no, I really want to play this. I'm like, then you're really fucking disgusting. I want you to get out. And I'm like, you learn a lot, but like, yeah. So the moral of this whole story is, at least, okay, for DMs and players, in both cases, have backup plans for when things go wrong, okay? So, have like safety valves here. So, for DMs, in the stealth situation, have some out that if things go absolutely shitty, like maybe have some kind of inspiration that they might come up with, like have some way out. Don't just like have this thing where like, oh well, if they get out, they're just fucked. Have some kind of way out of there. If you're the players, try to approach this with some kind of intelligence. I know that that's not helpful, but like preparation at least. And some games lend themselves to this better than others. Like some games, that's the point of the game, like Call of Cthulhu. The whole point of this game is preparation. But, obviously, like, get maps, get something, have backup plans. If you set the alarm off, what do we do? A lot of players don't even plan for that much. We're just like, okay, if the thief gets caught, what do we do? A lot of players, a lot of groups are just like, their only plan is to like, okay, thief opens the door, sneaks in, stabs a guy. And when he gets caught, they're like, okay, combat starts, we run in. That's not a backup plan. If that's your backup plan, at least have that be the plan. Like, at least, like, let everyone know that's the plan. So, like, if everyone's not aware that's the plan, somebody could fuck that up. Because somebody might, like, run. Seriously, I've had that happen. Like, I've seriously had, like, the thief gets caught, and then there's, the next guy in initiative is like, oh shit, there's a lot of guys, I run. And the guy's like, what are you doing? And then the whole combat's fucked. Because then several people run, two people are running this way and that. One guy gets dropped, somebody else runs back for them, and things go crazy. So yeah, it's about planning, and it's be ready, because when you're and be ready for payback, because sometimes it's okay. It's okay to go against what the DM is ready for. It's fine. It's great a lot of times. The Thieves World thing was perfect. It's one of the greatest examples of how to do it. That's one of those things where the game told the story started telling itself. But that wasn't rebelling. That was an organic story. This is the one where the DM was clearly frustrated and pissed and kind of freaked out by what the players were doing, and the players were just kind of reveling in it. And while they were kind of technically in character, those characters were freak shows. And maybe that's not the kind of characters that you should be reveling in. I don't know. I think it's just me preferring that the characters play somewhat heroic types. And I know in Shadowrun, by nature, you're playing criminals, but let's not try to play the kind of guys who are putting guns to janitors' heads and pulling the trigger for basically no reason. I just prefer my games to be a little more... a little less depraved, rather than that. Because, come on. The guy's making essentially minimum wage. He didn't have that coming. So, until next time, try to plan ahead, and don't have the plan be putting a gun in a janitor's mouth. Do I really have to explain that? But yeah, have a good one.